What happens when you invest consistently for 10 years straight? That is exactly what I did. Every single year for the past 10 years, I paid myself first. I spent less than I made, and I invested a big portion of my income into the stock market. So in today's video, I'm walking you through my full 10-year net worth journey. And in this video, I will share all the ups and all the downs, and I will also share the most important lessons I learned from 10 years of investing and saving and living frugally and trying to achieve financial independence in my life. And then at the end of this video, I am revealing my current net worth. And this number feels extra special to me because it's a brand new all-time high for my portfolio, and also because it's exactly 10 years ago I started on this journey towards financial independence. And with that said, let us get started with today's video. Okay, so my journey starts in 2016. I was 26 years old back at the time, and I had just sold my first apartment. And I bought this apartment right after the 2008 financial crisis and paid $100,000 for the apartment. And then I sold it 5 years later in 2016, and I got $260,000 for the apartment. So suddenly I had a big pile of money in my bank account. And to be honest, I was terrified of wasting all this money away. And that is because up until this point in my life, I had been very irresponsible with my money. I would basically spend everything that I earned and then some on stupid stuff like going out shopping way too much, partying way too much, and just eating out all the time and stupid things like that. So I felt very lucky and very blessed to get this amount of money into my life at a very early age, and I really did not want to waste it away on stupid things. So that is why I made a firm decision right after selling the apartment. I decided that I wanted to take full responsibility of my own finances, and I wanted to take this money and invest it in an intelligent way. So I started reading a lot of books on personal finance, and I also listened to a lot of podcasts around personal finance and financial independence. And what I learned is that almost all wealthy people who achieve financial independence in their lives, they invest their money in the stock market. So I decided that I wanted to do the same. And that is why 10 years ago, I invested into the stock market for the very first time. I only took a very small amount of money and invested into the stock market simply because I wasn't confident in my own abilities to invest in the stock market. And then I took all the money that I had left from selling my apartment, and I bought a new apartment in Copenhagen to fix up. And in 2016, my net worth peaked at around $240,000 because I had $260,000 after selling the apartment, and then I also had student loans of around $20,000. So my net worth was around $240,000 in 2016. In 2017, I finished renovating my new apartment and I started renting it out on Airbnb. And because my new apartment was located right in the city center of Copenhagen, it was very easy to rent it out and get bookings on Airbnb. And these Airbnb bookings, they really helped me lower my cost of living in the city center of Copenhagen. And that was something that made a huge difference in my life at the time, because I was not making that much money, but at the same time I had really low expenses, and I used Airbnb bookings to cover most of those expenses, which meant that even though I was not making a lot of money, I was still able to save and invest every single month. And at this point in my journey in 2017, I now understood that I had to take some of my money and invest it into the stock market if I ever wanted to become wealthy and financially free. But what I didn't understand is how important it is to control your spending if you actually want to get ahead financially in your life. I made a lot of stupid mistakes around money back in 2017. For example, I bought an Omega Speedmaster watch for $5,000 when in reality I couldn't afford a watch like that. I also bought a lot of expensive clothing. For example, I was a big fan of Stone Island back in the time, And I was saving and investing, and I also managed to set up some retirement accounts and stuff like that. So I was responsible with my money, but I was also just still spending way too much and saving way too little, basically. And my net worth peaked around $270,000 that year. 2018, however, that was a big turning point in my journey. In 2018, I started tracking my net worth every single month, and I also set myself the first big money-related goal in my life. I told myself back then that I wanted to have $1 million in stock investments by 2025. And I clearly remember back in 2018 that I was so excited because now I finally understood that if I could just save and invest for the next 10, 15 or 20 years, I knew that I could build serious wealth and I knew that I could become financially independent. I finally understood that if I just do the small and simple things every single day for the next 20 years, I will see incredible results in my own life. And this year I also started paying off my student loans very aggressively, and I saved and invested into the stock market every single month. And my net worth peaked at $268,000 in 2018. And then in 2019, I actually managed to pay off all my student loans. And that was 8 years earlier than the government plan. And that was just a huge milestone for me because that was the first time that I saw that my effort and my sacrifices actually paid off. I had these student loans and the government said that it would take me 10 years to pay them off, but I managed to do it in like 2 or 3 years. And now that liability completely disappeared when I tracked my net worth, and it just felt amazing because now I only had my mortgage and I didn't have any other debt than that. I continued to rent out my apartment on Airbnb and I lived way below my means, which meant that I could save and invest every single month of the year. And that also meant that my net worth grew and it peaked at $295,000 that year. And that leads us to 2020, which was a pretty crazy year for me and probably also for you. And I remember that at the beginning of the year, there was a big stock market crash that took a big bite out of my portfolio. But I actually managed to stay calm. I didn't check my investments for a full month and I didn't sell anything. Instead, I actually invested more when the prices were low. And in 2020, I had a lot of time on my hands like most of us had. So I started watching YouTube videos about stocks and investments and financial independence and stuff like that. And I stumbled upon some videos about Tesla, and I did a lot of research by watching YouTube videos about Tesla, and that is when I decided to buy Tesla stock for the first time in my life. And in 2020, because there wasn't really much to do, I also went in full frugal mode. I sold a bunch of stuff online. I finally got rid of the Omega watch that I had bought a few years earlier. And I sold all my Stone Island clothing. I canceled a lot of subscriptions and I basically ate all my meals at home and lived a very simple and frugal life. I also decided to sell my apartment in the city center and I decided to buy something smaller and cheaper in a different part of Copenhagen. And I did this because I felt kind of vulnerable financially living in this apartment in the city center with high monthly expenses, and I wanted something more simple, more cheap, that would put me in a more secure financial situation if something big happened again, like in the beginning of 2020. So this year my net worth peaked at $292,000. And it was also the first time that I realized that I was already in the top 5% of people my age in Denmark when it comes to net worth. So in 2021, I renovated the new apartment that I bought in a different part of Copenhagen, and I also started renting this apartment out on Airbnb. And because of the very low interest rates at the time, I had extremely low fixed expenses at this period in my life, and most months during the year I would spend less than $2,000 in total for the full month. And after finishing up renovating the apartment, I took all the money that I had left from selling the other apartment and I invested that into the stock market. And I bought a combination of index funds, Tesla stock, and a lot of stupid meme stocks, like for example GameStop and stuff like that. And I lost, of course, a lot of money investing into the meme stocks, but this was also the first time where I actually saw the power of compound interest. I remember that there was one month where Tesla added more than $30,000 to my portfolio in just one single month. And to me, that was a crazy amount of money to see. Basically, I didn't do anything, but my portfolio just grew by $30,000 in a month because of my investments. And that was crazy to experience that for the first time. My net worth peaked at $380,000 in 2021. In 2022, I started working in sales and I also kept renting out my new apartment on Airbnb. So now I was making more money than ever before, but I was still living very frugally and very simply. And this just means that I could put a lot of money into saving and investing. And when I checked my spreadsheet, I could see that I had a savings rate of more than 54% for the whole year. And my net worth peaked at $394,000. In 2023, I got a 13% raise on my job because I got another offer from another company and the company I worked for decided to match that offer. I decided to sell my apartment at the end of 2023 and I paid off my mortgage in full. And that was the first time in my life I was completely debt-free. And I took all the money that I had and I invested it straight into the stock market. And I bought a combination of index funds and Tesla stock. And my net worth reached a new all-time high of $400,000. In 2024, I was living with my ex-girlfriend, which kept all my fixed expenses very, very low. I also got another 5.5 salary increase at my sales job, and that is also the year when I started this YouTube channel. My investments also really started to take off in 2024. I clearly remember there was one month where my portfolio increased more than $85,000 in just 1 month. That was almost as much as I was making working a full year as a sales manager at my job. And I didn't have to do anything. It happened automatically, passively. The numbers just got bigger in my bank account and that was just a crazy experience. So that also means that my net worth grew to $575,000 and that is $175,000 more than the years prior. In 2025, me and my ex-girlfriend, we split up and I moved into this small studio apartment where I'm sitting now. And this was the first time in my life where I actually had pretty high living expenses and I didn't have any Airbnb to help me cover the cost. And in 2025, that was also the first time ever that I sold some of my stock portfolio to buy my Tesla Model Y and I paid $48,000 to buy that car. I performed well at work and I got another 10% raise in 2025 and I earned approximately, I think, $7,500 from this YouTube channel. But then I invested everything back into the channel, so I didn't really have that money available to invest into the stock market or anything like that. And my net worth peaked at $613,000 in 2025. And that leads us to right now. As you can see, I didn't reach my goal of becoming a millionaire by 2025, but I'm still very happy and very proud with the situation that I'm in right now. I have zero debt and I have these following assets. I have $510,000 invested in my free funds, and that is a combination of Tesla stock and index funds. And right now it's approximately a 50-50 split between the two. And then I have $83,000 in my two different retirement accounts. I have $13,000 in cash in the bank. And my Tesla Model Y is worth approximately $38,000 at this moment in time. So that all adds up to my current net worth of $644,000 in 2026 after 10 years of investing. And now I quickly want to share the most important lessons I learned from investing and saving and trying to achieve financial independence in the past decade. And the first thing I learned is that it doesn't really matter how much money you make. The only thing that matters is your savings rate. And what I did is that I had very low fixed expenses throughout my early years, and I did Airbnb bookings to help me cover most of my expenses, and that allowed me to invest pretty aggressively early on in my life, and that made a huge difference. I also learned that compound interest is real, but it takes a lot of dedication, a lot of time, and a lot of consistency before you see any meaningful results. For me, it took more than 8 years before the numbers in my accounts started to look impressive and before the growth was something that exceeded what I could make from my job, for example. I also learned that time in the market beats trying to time the market. I learned to stay calm during the crashes, and I learned to just trust the process and not panic when my portfolio took a big dive. I also learned that it's okay to make mistakes along the way, as long as you just stay consistent and as long as you just focus on the things that you can actually control. And I realized that the only thing I can control is how much I save, how much I invest, and if I sell and panic when the market crashes or if I don't. I don't have any control over all the external factors going on in the world, but I can always control how much money I actually save and invest in the stock market and if I keep my investments or not. So that's it. That's my full 10-year net worth journey. And I just want to say thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. And I think that if you enjoyed this video, you will probably also enjoy watching this video where I give a full breakdown of all my living expenses, living my best life here in Copenhagen in 2026. So with that said, thank you so much for watching the video and see you in the next one.